Ambassador Sarah Chen sat in her usual chair in the Galactic Council chambers. The massive room stretched out before her like a giant bowl. Thousands of seats held representatives from hundreds of different worlds. Some looked like humans. Others had tentacles or scales or bodies made of living crystal. After 300 years, humans still sat in the cheap seats at the back. Sarah had been Earth's representative for 20 years now. She had watched the same patterns repeat over and over. The older species would make decisions. The younger species would follow orders. Humans always said yes and smiled while doing it. They were known throughout the galaxy as the helpful ones, the ones who never caused trouble. Today felt different, though. Sarah could feel tension in her chest that had been building for months. The message from Earth Command sat in her secure tablet, and its contents made her hands shake with anger she had to hide. The matter of agricultural world designation is now open for discussion, announced Councillor Vexhai, the current council speaker. His blue skin gleamed under the chamber's artificial suns. The Andorian species had held major council positions for over 1,000 years. They considered themselves natural leaders. Sarah knew what was coming. For the past 6 months, the Zalathi consortium had been eyeing human agricultural colonies. The Zalathi were a species that looked like giant insects with too many arms. They were traders and business owners who controlled much of the galaxy's food distribution. They had been complaining that humans were not using their fertile worlds efficiently enough. The consortium presents compelling evidence, Vexhai continued, his voice echoing through the chamber. Human agricultural yields on the disputed worlds remain below optimal levels. The Galactic Food Security Act clearly states that unused agricultural potential constitutes a threat to interstellar stability. Zektar, the lead Zalathi representative, clicked his mandibles together in what humans had learned was their version of a smile. "We do not wish to harm our human friends," he said, though his compound eyes showed no warmth. "We simply believe these worlds would serve the galaxy better under more experienced management." Sarah's jaw clenched. The disputed worlds were home to 12 million human colonists, families who had lived there for generations, farmers who had turned barren rocks into gardens that fed half the sector. The consortium wanted to kick them off their own land and replace them with automated farms run by Zalathi overseers. "Ambassador Chen," Vexhai said, not even looking in her direction, "your species' response to this reasonable proposal?" Sarah stood slowly. Around the chamber, conversations continued as if she had not moved. Most representatives did not even bother to look at her. After 3 centuries, they had learned humans would always give in, always find some compromise, always choose peace over conflict. "The colonies in question have been human settlements for over 200 years, Sarah said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustic systems. "The families living there are not just farmers. They are our people. They have built lives, communities, cultures on those worlds." "Touching," clicked Zektar, "but inefficient. Our projections show a 40% increase in food production within 5 standard years of proper management implementation." "By proper management, you mean kicking out 12 million people from their homes," Sarah replied. "Relocation assistance will be provided," Vexhai said dismissively. "The Council has approved temporary housing on designated refugee worlds while permanent settlements are arranged." Sarah felt something cold settle in her stomach. Refugee worlds. They were talking about making 12 million humans homeless and calling it relocation assistance. She looked around the chamber, hoping to see some sign of concern from other representatives. She found none. This was just business as usual for them. "The matter has been decided," Vexhai announced. "Zalathi Consortium is granted administrative control over former human agricultural worlds designated in Schedule A. Human populations have 90 standard days to complete voluntary relocation." Voluntary. Sarah almost laughed at the word. Nothing about this was voluntary. But she did not laugh. She had learned long ago that showing emotion in the council chambers only made things worse for humans. "We will need time to coordinate the relocation," Sarah said carefully. 90 days is not sufficient for moving 12 million people. "The timeline is non-negotiable," Zektar clicked. Optimal planting season begins in 95 standard days. Any delays reduce projected yields. That was it then? 12 million people had 90 days to abandon their homes because it might hurt projected crop yields. Sarah had been dealing with this kind of decision for 20 years, but somehow this felt different, bigger, more final. She thought about the families on New Kansas, where her own sister lived with her children. She thought about the orchards on Harvest Moon that had taken 3 generations of human farmers to perfect. She thought about the small towns where humans had built schools and hospitals and parks, creating little pieces of earth among the stars. All of it was about to be erased because the Zalathi could run the farms more efficiently. Over the next 3 weeks, Sarah watched the consortium begin their takeover. They sent advanced teams to survey the worlds and plan their improvements. They announced which buildings would be kept and which would be demolished. They published lists of equipment they would purchase from departing humans and equipment they would simply confiscate as infrastructure necessary for continued operations. The human colonists began to organize their departure with the quiet resignation that had become their species' trademark. They packed their belongings, sold what they could, and prepared to leave behind everything they had built. Then the protests began. It started small. A group of farmers on New Kansas decided they would not leave. They set up camps around their fields and announced they would stay until the council reconsidered. Local Zalathi supervisors called in security forces to remove them. The security team that arrived was not Zalathi. It was a mixed unit of enforcers from several council species, led by a Korthax commander whose species looked like armored bears, with too many teeth. They were known for being efficient at crowd control. Sarah watched the news feeds from her embassy office on Galactic Station Prime. The human protesters had built a peaceful camp between 2 wheat fields. Families with children sat in circles singing old Earth songs while they waited for the authorities to arrive. They had painted signs that said things like, "This is our home, and please reconsider," and "We have nowhere else to go." The enforcement team gave them exactly 5 minutes to disperse. When the humans did not move, the Korthax commander gave the order to advance. His troops carried shock weapons and restraint fields, tools designed to disable and capture rather than kill. They were supposed to be safe options for dealing with civilian populations. But the commander had not ordered his troops to be careful. He had ordered them to be efficient. Sarah watched in horror as the enforcement team swept through the peaceful camp like a storm. Shock weapons fired into crowds of sitting families. Children screamed as restraint fields crushed them against the ground. Parents who tried to protect their kids were hit with neural disruptors that left them convulsing in the dirt. The whole thing was over in less than 10 minutes. When the dust cleared, 47 humans were dead, including 16 children. Another 120 were seriously injured. The rest were loaded into transport ships and taken to temporary detention facilities. The Korthax commander filed his report that evening. Minimal resistance encountered. Site secured with acceptable casualty levels. Recommend similar protocols for future clearing operations. Acceptable casualty levels. 47 dead humans were acceptable casualties for clearing a protest camp. Sarah stood in her office, staring at the news feeds, feeling something breaking, a part inside her chest. She had spent her entire career trying to find peaceful solutions to problems like this. She had believed that patience and diplomacy could eventually build a galaxy where humans were treated as equals instead of junior partners. She had been wrong. Her secure communicator chimed. A message from Earth Command appeared on her screen, marked with the highest priority encryption. Sarah read it twice to make sure she understood correctly. Ambassador Chen, you are hereby authorized to terminate all cooperative agreements with Galactic Council effective immediately. Recall all human technical personnel from Council facilities. Cease all humanitarian assistance operations. Withdraw from all joint scientific projects. End diplomatic niceties. The age of human patience is over. Signed, Admiral Marcus Webb, Earth Defense Command. Sarah looked out her office window at the massive Galactic Station Prime. The station was a marvel of engineering, a city in space that housed 10 million beings from across the galaxy. Humans had helped build it. Human engineers maintained its power systems. Human doctors staffed its hospitals. Human teachers worked in its schools. Human farmers supplied much of its food. The galaxy had grown comfortable with human cooperation. They expected it. They depended on it. They took it for granted. That was about to change. Sarah walked to her desk and opened a secure channel to the council chambers. In a few hours, there would be an emergency session about the agricultural transition process. Representatives would discuss how to handle similar relocations on other human worlds. They would plan the most efficient ways to redistribute human colonies to species they considered more capable. She started composing her response. Not a diplomatic protest or a formal objection or a request for reconsideration, something much simpler and much more final. As she typed, Sarah thought about her sister's family on New Kansas. She thought about the 47 people who had died for the crime of wanting to stay in their homes. She thought about 300 years of human patience and cooperation and endless willingness to compromise. She thought about what Admiral Webb had said in his message. The age of human patience is over. Sarah finished her message and scheduled it to broadcast to every communication system in Council space in exactly 12 hours. That would give human personnel throughout the galaxy time to reach safe positions. It would give Earth's fleets time to finish their preparations. After 3 centuries of being nice, humans were about to show the galaxy who they really were. The breaking point had finally arrived. 12 hours after the massacre on New Kansas, every communication screen in Council space suddenly activated at the same time. The regular programming disappeared, replaced by a human face that most galactic citizens had never seen before. Admiral Marcus Webb sat in what looked like a ship's command center, though no one recognized the design. Behind him, holographic displays showed star charts and tactical information that made no sense to most viewers. The technology looked advanced even by Council standards, but the Council had never seen humans using anything like it. "My name is Admiral Marcus Webb of the Earth Defense Command," he began, his voice calm and measured. "For 300 years, humanity has been a cooperative member of the galactic community. We have followed Council laws, accepted Council decisions, and provided assistance wherever it was requested. On Galactic Station Prime, emergency meetings were already beginning. Council members who had been getting ready for sleep suddenly found themselves rushing to crisis centers. The unauthorized broadcast was reaching every corner of Council space, and no one seemed able to stop it. Yesterday, 47 of our people were killed for the crime of not wanting to leave their homes," Webb continued. "The Council has ruled this an acceptable outcome. They have described the deaths of our children as necessary for galactic stability." Ambassador Sarah Chen sat in her quarters, watching the broadcast she had helped coordinate. Around her, the few human staff members remaining on the station were quietly packing their belongings. In a few hours, there would be no humans left in Council space except for the colonists who were about to be relocated. "We accepted this treatment because we believed in the possibility of peaceful coexistence," Webb said. "We thought that patience and cooperation would eventually earn us the respect we deserved. We were wrong. On New Kansas, Zelathi Consortium managers were trying to figure out why all their newly installed equipment had stopped working. The automated systems they had brought to replace human farmers were displaying error messages in languages their computers could not translate. Their communication links back to Consortium headquarters had gone completely silent. Similar problems were starting to appear throughout Council space. Hyperspace beacons that humans had maintained for centuries began shutting down one by one. Communication networks that depended on human-built relay stations started showing massive gaps in coverage. Medical facilities found that their human-manufactured equipment was no longer responding to commands. "You assumed we were weak because we always chose to compromise," Webb continued. "You mistook our restraint for inability. You believed that because we never showed you our true strength, we did not possess it." Counselor Vexhai was in an emergency session with the Council's military leaders, trying to understand what was happening. Reports were flooding in from across Council space. Human personnel were disappearing from critical facilities. Human-made equipment was failing everywhere at once. Most disturbing of all, no one could locate any human military vessels to monitor or stop. For 3 centuries, the Council had kept careful track of human military capabilities. They knew about Earth's small defense fleet. They had inspected human colony defenses. They had approved every major piece of human military hardware. Humans were not supposed to have any military secrets. We have 50,000 worlds that your surveys never found, Webb said, and council chambers across the galaxy fell silent. We have technologies your scientists never imagined. We have capabilities your military analysts never detected. 50,000 worlds. The entire council space contained only about 20,000 inhabited systems. If humans really controlled 50,000 worlds, they had somehow hidden a civilization twice the size of the known galaxy. Zektar, the Zalathi representative who had led the agricultural takeover, was frantically trying to contact his home government. The communication channels were dead. His own security systems were showing impossible readings. According to his sensors, there were no ships anywhere near his location. But his defensive screens were detecting massive energy signatures that seemed to be coming from empty space. The Zalathi Consortium has demanded proof of our claims, Webb said, as if he could hear Zektar's thoughts. We are happy to provide a demonstration. On the main viewer in the council chambers, a new image appeared. It showed the Zalathi home system, specifically the area around their capital world of Hive Prime. The planet was surrounded by massive orbital defense platforms, each one the size of a small moon. The Zalathi were proud of these defenses. They had spent centuries building them, creating what they claimed was the most impregnable fortress in the galaxy. Council members watched in stunned silence as the orbital platforms simply vanished, not destroyed, not damaged, just gone, as if they had never existed. We moved them, Webb explained calmly. Your defense platforms are now in empty space approximately 40 light-years from your homeworld. They are completely intact and fully functional. Your crews are unharmed and have been provided with emergency life support until rescue arrives. The implications hit the council members like a physical blow. Moving objects that massive across interstellar distances was supposed to be impossible. The energy requirements alone should have been detectable from thousands of light-years away. Yet humans had done it without anyone noticing any unusual activity at all. We could have moved them into your sun instead, Webb added. The choice was yours. Emergency meetings were now taking place in every major government center in council space. Military advisors who had spent their careers studying human capabilities were trying to explain how their assessments could have been so completely wrong. Economists were calculating what would happen if human cooperation permanently ended. Scientists were analyzing the technology that had just been demonstrated and finding their instruments unable to explain what they had seen. On Earth, President Martinez was meeting with her cabinet in the deep bunkers beneath New Geneva. For months, she had been receiving reports from Admiral Webb and his teams about the preparations they had been making. Even she had not fully understood the scope of what humans had built in secret. Are we really ready for this? She asked Webb during their secure conference call. We have been ready for this since first contact, Webb replied. We learned about galactic history during our first years in council space. Every species that achieved spaceflight followed the same pattern: expand, conquer, dominate. We knew that eventually we would be forced to choose between submission and resistance. The president looked at the report spread across her desk. Detailed analyses of every major galactic government, complete technical specifications for all known alien military equipment, star charts showing the locations of secret human colonies that had been established over 3 centuries of careful exploration. Most impressive of all, a list of human technological capabilities that she was only now learning existed. How long have we been preparing for this war? She asked. Since the day we joined the council, Webb answered. We never wanted a war, Madam President. But we always knew it might be necessary, so we made sure we would be ready to win it. Back in council space, the emergency sessions were reaching desperate conclusions. The Korthax Empire, known for their military strength, had just discovered that their most advanced warships could not detect or target whatever technology humans were using. The Andorian Republic was reporting that all human technical advisors had vanished from their critical infrastructure, leaving systems that no one else knew how to maintain. Most frightening of all, no one could find Earth. The Sol system appeared to be exactly where it had always been, but every attempt to send ships or communications there resulted in the same response: the ships and signals simply disappeared. Long-range sensors showed a normal yellow star with familiar planetary positions, but any attempt to get close enough for detailed scans failed completely. "Your fleets are free to attack our homeworld," Webb said, as if responding to their thoughts. "We will not stop you from trying, but you should know that what you think of as Earth is not what you will find when you arrive." The broadcast continued for another hour. Webb calmly explained that humanity had spent 3 centuries studying galactic civilizations, learning their weaknesses and preparing for the day when patience would no longer be enough. He described a network of hidden human colonies that had been carefully concealed from Council surveys. He mentioned technologies that humans had developed in secret, while pretending to be satisfied with the inferior equipment the Council allowed them to use. Most chilling of all, he explained that humans had been monitoring every major military facility, government center, and strategic resource in Council space for decades. They knew where every important leader lived. They knew the defensive capabilities of every major world. They knew exactly how to disable the infrastructure that kept galactic civilization functioning. "We do not want to conquer you," Webb said, as his broadcast began to wind down. "We never wanted to rule over other species. We simply wanted to be left alone to live our lives in peace. You made that impossible." In the Council chambers, Councillor Vexhai was trying to maintain order. Of losing all human cooperation and finding the numbers terrifying. "3 days ago, we were your partners," Webb concluded. 2 days ago, we were your victims. Today, we are your equals, whether you choose to acknowledge it or not. Tomorrow, the choice of what comes next will be yours. The broadcast ended, leaving Council space in stunned silence. Within hours, every major government was trying to contact Earth for negotiations. None of their messages were getting through. Human colonies throughout Council space were reporting that they had severed all ties with local authorities and were now under the protection of Earth Defense Command. The Zalathi Consortium was facing complete system failures as their automated equipment refused to function without human technical support. The Korthax Empire was discovering that their weapon systems had been quietly modified over the years by human maintenance crews, and now those modifications were preventing the weapons from working properly. Most shocking of all, several major worlds were reporting that their orbital defense systems had simply vanished, just like the platforms around Hive Prime. The missing defenses were later found floating in empty space, perfectly intact, but completely relocated from where they were supposed to be. The message was clear. If humans could move defensive platforms, they could just as easily move the planets those platforms were supposed to protect. For 300 years, the galaxy had seen humans as helpful junior partners who could be counted on to provide assistance and accept whatever treatment they received. In a single day, that illusion had been completely shattered. The Council was about to learn that human patience had limits, and those limits had finally been reached. The war did not begin with massive explosions or fleets of warships racing through hyperspace. It began with silence. Across Council space, the hyperspace beacon network that had connected civilizations for over 1,000 years simply stopped working. The beacons were still there, still physically intact, but they no longer responded to activation codes. Ships trying to use them for faster-than-light travel found themselves trapped in normal space, forced to use slower propulsion methods that turned days of travel into months or years. Captain Torres of the Andorian merchant vessel Star Prophet was one of the first to discover the problem. His ship was carrying medical supplies from the manufacturing worlds to a colony suffering from a plague outbreak. The journey should have taken 3 days using the beacon network. Without it, his cargo would arrive 6 months too late to save anyone. "This has to be some kind of technical malfunction," Torres told his crew as they stared at their navigation displays. "The humans built these beacons, but the maintenance protocols are automated. There's no way they could shut down the entire network." Torres was wrong. The beacons had not shut down. They had simply stopped accepting commands from non-human ships. When the first human vessel approached a beacon 2 hours later, it activated immediately and functioned perfectly. The human ship completed its jump and continued on its way, leaving Torres and thousands of other stranded captains to realize the truth. The humans had not destroyed the beacon network. They had taken control of it. On Galactic Station Prime, emergency meetings were taking place in every government sector. Counselor Vexhai stood before a massive holographic display showing the rapidly collapsing state of galactic transportation. Red indicators marked beacon failures throughout Council space. Yellow warnings showed communication networks going offline. Orange alerts indicated critical supply shortages already developing on dozens of worlds. How long can our economies survive without human cooperation? Vexhai asked his advisors. The answer came from Economic Minister Ralden, whose species had been tracking galactic trade for centuries. Best case scenario, assuming we can restore basic services quickly, we're looking at 18 months of severe shortages. Worst case, if the humans maintain their position indefinitely, we face complete economic collapse within 5 years. That assumes they stop at passive resistance, added military advisor Kreshna. If they decide to take active measures, we could see total infrastructure failure within weeks. As if summoned by Kreshna's words, reports began flooding in from across the galaxy. Human technical personnel were not just leaving their posts, they were taking with them the access codes, maintenance procedures, and technical documentation that kept critical systems running. On the industrial world of Forge Prime, the massive fusion reactors that powered the planet's manufacturing centers had shut down completely. The Korthax supervisors discovered that the reactors required daily authorization codes that only the human engineers had known. Without those codes, the reactors would remain offline indefinitely. Similar problems were developing everywhere humans had worked. Medical facilities found that their diagnostic equipment was locked behind human-specific security protocols. Agricultural worlds discovered that their climate control systems would not accept commands from non-human operators. Even basic life support systems on space stations were failing as human-maintained components refused to function. They didn't sabotage anything, reported Chief Engineer Voltar from Forge Prime. They just made sure that nothing would work without them. The implications were staggering. For 3 centuries, humans had quietly made themselves indispensable to galactic civilization. They had not done it through force or threats, but through simple competence and reliability. Now that competence was being withdrawn, and the galaxy was discovering how dependent they had become on human cooperation, Admiral Thexan of the Korthax Empire was preparing what he considered the obvious response. If humans wanted to play games with infrastructure, he would remind them why the Korthax were known as the galaxy's premier military force. His war fleet was already assembled and ready to teach these upstart humans about the consequences of defying their betters. Target the primary human colonies, Thexan ordered his fleet commanders during their strategic briefing. We will demonstrate that their technical tricks cannot protect them from superior firepower. The target was New Geneva, one of the oldest and most important human colonies outside the Sol system. Intelligence reports indicated it was a major population center with minimal defensive capabilities. A quick strike against New Geneva would show the galaxy that humans could be defeated, despite their mysterious technologies. Thexan's fleet consisted of 12 heavy battle cruisers, each one capable of destroying a planet's surface defenses, single-handedly. They were supported by 40 escort frigates and a massive command dreadnought that served as Thexan's flagship. It was the largest military force the Korthax had assembled in over a century. The fleet approached New Geneva through normal space, since the hyperspace beacons were no longer accepting their commands. Long-range sensors showed exactly what they expected. A peaceful colony world with a few orbital platforms and some light defensive satellites. No sign of the advanced human military that Admiral Webb had claimed to possess. Maintain attack formation, Thexan commanded as his ships moved into weapons range. Prepare to demonstrate the price of human arrogance. That was when the human ships appeared. They did not come from hyperspace, which would have created detectable energy signatures. They did not decloak, which would have shown up on sensors as they approached. One moment, space around the Korthax fleet was empty. The next moment it was filled with vessels that should not have been able to exist. The human ships were larger than anything in the Korthax fleet, but they moved with impossible grace for their size. They seemed to flicker in and out of normal space, appearing in one location and then instantly materializing somewhere else. Most disturbing of all, they showed no energy signatures that Korthak's sensors could identify. Unknown vessels. You are interfering with a lawful military operation. Thexan broadcast on all frequencies. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. The response came from a human ship that had somehow positioned itself directly between Thexan's dreadnought and the planet below. The vessel was easily 3 times the size of his flagship, though it had appeared there without any detectable movement. "This is Captain Rivera of the UES Retribution," came the calm reply. "You are approaching a human colony with hostile intent. You have one opportunity to withdraw peacefully." Thexan laughed, a sound that came out as a growling roar through his species' vocal apparatus. "You are outnumbered 20 to 1, human. Your threats are meaningless." "We are outnumbered," Rivera agreed. "Would you like me to correct that imbalance?" Before Thexan could respond, space around his fleet filled with more human ships. Hundreds of them, appearing from what seemed like empty vacuum. Within seconds, the Korthak's fleet found itself, completely, surrounded by vessels that had materialized out of nowhere. "How is this possible?" demanded Commander Vekral from one of the escort frigates. "There's nothing on sensors. These ships don't register on any of our detection systems." "That's because you're using the wrong sensors," Rivera explained as if she were teaching a class of students. "Your technology assumes that ships exist in normal space-time. Ours exist in whatever dimensional phase we choose." Thexan had spent his entire career studying military tactics and had never encountered anything like this. Ships that could appear and disappear at will. Vessels that could not be targeted by conventional weapons because they existed partially, outside normal space. Technology that made his entire fleet's advantages meaningless. "You want to see what humans are capable of when we stop being nice," Rivera continued. "I'm going to give you 2 choices. Order your fleet to withdraw and return home, and we'll escort you safely out of our space, or open fire on us and learn why we don't build weapons the way other species do." Thexan was not accustomed to backing down from challenges. The Korthaks had built their reputation on never showing weakness in the face of enemy threats. His instincts told him to attack, to show these humans that military superiority could not be overcome by technical tricks. "All ships, target the human vessel directly ahead of us," he commanded. "Full weapons barrage. Show them the power of Korthak's military might." Every ship in the Korthak's fleet opened fire simultaneously. Energy beams, plasma torpedoes, and kinetic projectiles filled the space between the fleets. The combined firepower was enough to vaporize a small moon, all of it focused on Captain Rivera's ship. The weapons passed harmlessly through the Retribution, as if it were made of empty space. "Adaptive phasing technology," Rivera explained calmly. "Your weapons exist in normal spacetime. We don't, at least not while you're shooting at us. Your turn to see what our weapons can do." The Retribution fired a single beam of energy that struck Thexan's dreadnought amidships. There was no explosion, no structural damage, no casualties. Instead, every system on the massive warship simply stopped working. Engines, weapons, shields, life support, communications, even the gravity generators. Everything shut down at once, leaving the crew floating helplessly in their darkened command centers. "Your ship is now a museum piece," Rivera informed the stunned admiral. "All systems disabled, but your crew is completely unharmed. We could have destroyed you, but destruction is wasteful. Instead, we've given you something to think about." Similar beams struck every other ship in the Korthak's fleet. Within minutes, the entire armada was drifting helplessly, their crews alive but their vessels completely powerless. The human ships began positioning themselves around the disabled fleet like shepherds gathering wayward animals. "We'll tow you back to your home system," Rivera announced. "Consider this a lesson in what happens when you bring conventional weapons to fight an unconventional war." News of the Korthak's fleet's complete defeat spread throughout Council space within hours. The most feared military force in the galaxy had been neutralized without a single shot being fired effectively. Worse, the humans had demonstrated that they could disable enemy ships without destroying them, which meant they had been choosing to show mercy rather than demonstrating inability to cause harm. Emergency sessions were convening in every major government center. Military advisors who had spent their careers analyzing human capabilities were trying to explain how their assessments had been so completely wrong. Economic ministers were calculating the costs of continued conflict with beings who could shut down galactic civilization at will. On Earth, Admiral Webb was monitoring the situation from his command center deep beneath the Pacific Ocean. The Sci-Fi facility had been under construction for over 2 centuries, built by human engineers using technologies they had developed in secret while pretending to be satisfied with council-approved equipment. "How are our people handling the transition?" Webb asked his operations chief. "Better than expected," came the reply. 300 years of preparation are paying off. Our colonies are completely self-sufficient now that we've activated the hidden infrastructure. Our fleets are positioned to protect every human settlement. Most importantly, civilian morale remains high now that they know we're finally fighting back. Webb nodded, looking at the tactical displays that showed human vessels throughout the galaxy. Ships that had been disguised as cargo haulers and passenger transports were revealing their true nature as advanced military platforms. Hidden bases that had been camouflaged as mining operations or research stations were coming online as strategic command centers. The galaxy was about to learn that human patience had not been weakness. It had been preparation time. And now that preparation was complete. The real war was about to begin. 3 weeks after the Korthax fleet's humiliating defeat, the Galactic Council was beginning to understand the true scope of what humanity had hidden from them for 3 centuries. Reports flooded in from across Council space, each one more disturbing than the last. On the industrial world of Titan Forge, mining supervisors had discovered that their excavation sites were not actually mining sites at all. The massive tunnels that humans had carved over decades were not for extracting minerals. They were carefully concealed observation posts equipped with sensors that could monitor everything happening within a 50 light-year radius. Similar discoveries were being made everywhere humans had worked. What appeared to be simple research stations were actually advanced intelligence-gathering facilities. Seemingly routine cargo shipments had been carrying sophisticated surveillance equipment that was now revealing the locations of every major military installation in Council space. "They've been watching us for 300 years, reported Intelligence Director Nexaval during an emergency briefing on Galactic Station Prime. "Every fleet movement, every government decision, every strategic resource, it's all been monitored and cataloged by human observers." Counselor Vexhai stared at the holographic displays showing the extent of human surveillance. Thousands of monitoring stations, all perfectly hidden, all providing detailed information about Council activities. The humans had not just been cooperative members of galactic society. They had been conducting the most comprehensive intelligence operation in known history. "How many of our secrets do they know?" Vexhai asked. "All of them," Nexaval replied grimly. "Based on the sophistication of their monitoring network, we have to assume they have complete intelligence on every Council member species. They know our military capabilities, our economic weaknesses, our political structures, our social problems, everything." While the Council was still trying to comprehend the scope of human intelligence gathering, the Hegemon Alliance was preparing what they considered the ultimate response. The Alliance was a coalition of the galaxy's most militarily aggressive species, united by their belief that strength was the only language that mattered in interstellar relations. Supreme Commander Vashati of the Alliance had been quietly assembling the largest military force in galactic history. Representatives from 12 different species had contributed their best warships, their most experienced crews, and their most advanced weapons. The combined fleet numbered over 3,000 vessels, more than enough firepower to sterilize an entire solar system. "If the humans want to hide behind their technical tricks, we will force them to face us in open battle," Vashati declared to his assembled commanders. "We will strike at their homeworld itself. Let them try to phase shift when their planet is under direct attack." The Alliance fleet had spent weeks planning their assault on Earth. They had analyzed every scrap of intelligence about Sol system defenses, studied the tactical data from the Korthax fleet's encounter, and developed new weapons specifically designed to counter human phasing technology. Most importantly, they had discovered what they believed was a secret hyperspace route. that would allow them to bypass the mysterious barriers that seemed to protect Earth from long-range observation. The route had been found in ancient star charts that predated human contact with the galaxy. The humans may have hidden their homeworld from conventional approach vectors, Vashati explained to his fleet commanders. But they could not have anticipated attack routes that existed before they joined galactic society. The Alliance fleet assembled at the edge of Council space and began their journey toward Sol system using the ancient hyperspace corridor. The passage was difficult and dangerous, requiring precise navigation through unstable regions of space-time, but it would bring them to Earth's doorstep without warning. The journey took 6 days of careful travel through the treacherous hyperspace route. When the fleet finally emerged into normal space at the edge of Sol system, they found exactly what they had expected to find: a normal yellow star with familiar planetary positions. What they had not expected to find was that Earth's moon was missing. "Confirm sensor readings," Vashati ordered his navigation officer. "Where is the satellite designated Luna?" The answer came from his science division. Luna was gone, replaced by something that should not have been possible to build. Where Earth's moon should have been, a massive artificial structure now orbited the planet. The construction was the size of a small moon itself, but clearly manufactured rather than natural. Even more disturbing, the original Luna was still visible in Earth's sky. Long-range sensors showed it hovering in a different orbital position, apparently moved to make room for the artificial construction that had taken its place. "They moved their moon," whispered Commander Yaktel from one of the escort squadrons. "How do you move an entire moon?" "The same way they moved our orbital defense platforms," Vashati replied grimly. "With technology we don't understand." The Alliance fleet moved deeper into Sol system. More impossible sights came into view. The original Luna, now clearly visible as an artificial construction site, was surrounded by shipyards that dwarfed anything in Council space. Vessels the size of continents were under construction in massive building berths. The construction activity suggested that humanity had been building warships for centuries, hidden behind the disguise of their natural moon. "This is not possible," reported Chief Engineer Molsek from his analysis station. "The energy requirements for construction on this scale should have been detectable throughout the local galaxy cluster. How did they hide industrial activity of this magnitude?" The answer became apparent as more human constructions came into view. Sol system was not the small, lightly defended star system that Council surveys had documented. It was a fortress that had been carefully concealed for 3 centuries. Artificial structures filled the space between planets, all of them camouflaged to look like natural objects or empty space to outside observers. Most impressive of all was the structure that had replaced Luna. As the Alliance fleet approached, Earth-detailed scans revealed that the artificial moon was actually a single massive weapon platform. Its surface was covered with devices that no Council scientist could identify, but the energy signatures suggested firepower beyond anything in the known galaxy. "Supreme Commander," reported Tactical Officer Vendar, his voice shaking with barely controlled fear. "I'm reading weapon signatures from that platform that exceed our combined fleet's total firepower by several orders of magnitude." Vashti stared at the tactical displays, trying to comprehend what he was seeing. The weapons platform that had replaced Earth's moon could apparently destroy his entire fleet with a single barrage. Worse, there were dozens of similar platforms, scattered throughout the inner system, all of them hidden behind sophisticated camouflage that had fooled galactic sensors for centuries. "Open communications with the human forces," Vashati ordered, though he was beginning to suspect that his grand assault had become something closer to suicide. The response came from the massive weapons platform that orbited Earth. "This is General Harrison, Sol Defense Command. You have brought 3,000 warships into our home system with hostile intent. Before we discuss your surrender terms, I want you to understand exactly what you chose to fight." The image that appeared on every screen in the Alliance fleet showed a human military officer standing in what appeared to be the command center of the artificial moon. Behind him, holographic displays showed tactical information that made the Alliance commander's blood run cold. Every ship in their fleet was tagged and tracked, Every weapon system was analyzed and cataloged. Every possible escape route was covered by human defensive positions. The Alliance fleet was not conducting a surprise attack. They had flown directly into the most sophisticated trap in galactic history. "You came to our home to make war on our families," General Harrison continued, his voice calm but carrying an undertone of absolute menace. "We could have stopped you 100 light years out, but we wanted you to see this. We wanted you to understand what you chose to fight." The general gestured to his tactical displays, and the information appeared on the Alliance fleet's screens as well. Weapons platforms that could destroy planets, defensive systems that could disable entire fleets without firing a shot. Most terrifying of all, ship construction facilities that suggested humanity could build fleets faster than the Alliance could destroy them. "Your combined fleet represents the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history," Harrison observed. "It took you months to gather these ships from across Council space. It would take us approximately 6 hours to build a replacement fleet of equivalent size, assuming we needed to." Supreme Commander Vashati found his voice, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. "What are you?" Harrison's expression softened slightly, as if he were explaining something to a confused child. "We're what you made us pretend not to be. For 3 centuries you treated us as junior partners who needed guidance and supervision. You assumed we were weak because we chose cooperation over conflict. You mistook our patience for inability." The general walked to a viewport that showed Earth hanging in space below. The planet looked peaceful and normal, but the Alliance commanders now knew they were seeing another illusion. If humanity had hidden this much military capability throughout Sol system, Earth itself was probably not what it appeared to be either. "We learned your histories during our first years in Council space," Harrison continued. "Every species follows the same pattern: explore, expand, conquer, dominate. We knew that eventually you would decide we were successful enough to be worth conquering." The holographic displays changed to show historical data from across the galaxy. Records of civilizations that had been guided by elder species until they lost their independence completely. Economic integration programs that had resulted in younger species becoming resource colonies for their supposed partners. "We saw what happened to every other species that tried to maintain independence while remaining part of galactic society," Harrison said. "The pattern was always the same. Cooperation leads to dependence. Dependence leads to control. Control leads to absorption or elimination." Vashiti realized that his fleet was not just outnumbered and outgunned. They were facing an enemy that had spent 3 centuries studying galactic civilizations and preparing for exactly this moment. Humanity had not been caught off guard by galactic aggression. They had been expecting it and planning their response since the day they made first contact. "So what happens now?" Vashati asked. "Now you get to make a choice," Harrison replied. "You can surrender your fleet and accept escort back to your home systems, where you can explain to your governments that attacking Earth was a mistake. Or you can fight and discover why humanity stopped building conventional weapons after we achieved interstellar travel." The Supreme Commander looked around at his bridge crew, seeing his own uncertainty reflected in their faces. They had come here expecting to crush a technically advanced but militarily weak opponent. Instead, they had discovered that humanity possessed military capabilities that made the entire Alliance fleet look like an antique collection. "Why don't you use conventional weapons?" Vashati found himself asking. Harrison smiled, and for the first time, it was a genuinely warm expression. "Because we don't need them. When you can move moons, disable fleets without destroying them, and phase your ships out of normal space-time, why would you settle for simply blowing things up?" The Alliance fleet surrendered without firing a shot. As human ships began escorting the defeated armada out of Sol system, Harrison sent a final message to the galaxy. "This demonstration is concluded. Humanity remains willing to discuss peaceful coexistence with any species that approaches us as equals. However, the age of human patience with those who mistake kindness for weakness is permanently over." Word of the Alliance fleet's complete surrender reached Council space within hours. The most powerful military force in galactic history had been defeated without a battle, neutralized by human capabilities that no one had imagined existed. The Galaxy was beginning to understand that humanity's 3 centuries of cooperation had not been submission. It had been preparation. And now that preparation was complete. 6 months after the surrender of the Hegemon Alliance fleet, the once mighty Galactic Council chambers stood empty and silent. The massive structure that had been the center of galactic government for over 2 millennia was being carefully dismantled by human engineering teams. Every piece of the building was being preserved, catalogued, and prepared for transport to a museum world where future generations could study the remains of the old order. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood in the ruins of the chamber where she had spent 20 years representing humanity's interests. The seats were gone now, removed along with the complex systems that had maintained the artificial gravity and atmospheric controls for hundreds of different species. Only the basic structure remained, and even that would be gone within days. "It feels strange to see it like this," she said to Admiral Webb, who had come to oversee the final stages of the dismantling process. "All things end," Webb replied, though his tone was not unsympathetic. "The question is whether they end because they have fulfilled their purpose, or because they have failed in it." The Galactic Council had definitely failed in its purpose. In the months following humanity's revelation of their true capabilities, the old government structure had collapsed under the weight of its own contradictions. Species that had spent centuries accepting council authority were suddenly questioning why they needed guidance from organizations that had so completely misjudged human nature. More importantly, the economic disruption caused by the loss of human cooperation had made it clear how dependent galactic civilization had become on the species they had treated as junior partners. Without human technical expertise, transportation networks failed. Without human medical knowledge, plague outbreaks went uncontrolled. Without human agricultural techniques, food shortages developed on dozens of worlds. The Council had tried to respond by demanding that humans resume their cooperative activities as a matter of galactic security. When humanity refused, several member species had attempted to force compliance through economic sanctions and military threats. Those attempts had ended quickly, when human forces demonstrated their ability to shut down entire star systems by simply deactivating the infrastructure that kept them functioning. "The new facility is ready for the opening session," Admiral Webb informed Sarah as they walked through the empty chambers. "Are you prepared for what comes next?" Sarah nodded, though she felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. The new structure that would replace the Galactic Council was radically different from anything that had existed before. Instead of a hierarchical organization where elder species guided younger ones, it would be a confederation of equals where every member had equal voice and equal responsibility. The headquarters for the new Galactic Confederation was located on a previously uninhabited world that humans had selected specifically for its neutrality. The planet, now called Haven, had been terraformed using human technology but designed with input from every species that chose to participate in the new government structure. Unlike the old council chambers, which had been designed to emphasize the authority and status of different species, the Confederation building was built around the principle of equality. Every representative had identical facilities, identical access to information, and identical voting power regardless of their species' age, size, or technological development. Most importantly, membership in the Confederation was completely voluntary. Species could choose to participate as full members, associate members, or not at all. There were no requirements for joining beyond a commitment to peaceful coexistence and mutual respect. There were no penalties for leaving beyond the loss of Confederation benefits and services. "The Zelathi delegation has requested a private meeting before the opening ceremonies," Webb informed Sarah, as they made their way to the transport that would take them to Haven. "They want to discuss terms for their membership application." Sarah was not surprised. The Zelathi Consortium had been among the first to feel the effects of human non-cooperation. Their automated farming systems, designed to replace human agricultural colonies, had failed completely without human technical support. Worse, the human colonies they had displaced had cut off all food exports to Zelathi space, creating shortages that threatened millions of Zelathi civilians. The private meeting took place in one of Haven's neutral conference facilities. Zektar, the same Zelathi representative who had led the takeover of human agricultural worlds, looked significantly less confident than he had during the council sessions 6 months earlier. Ambassador Chen, he began, his mandibles clicking, nervously. The consortium wishes to express its regret regarding the recent misunderstandings between our peoples. Misunderstandings, Sarah repeated, her voice carefully neutral. Is that what you call the forced displacement of 12 million humans and the deaths of 47 protesters? Zektar's compound eyes shifted uncomfortably. The consortium acknowledges that errors in judgment were made. We are prepared to offer substantial compensation for any inconvenience that may have resulted from our actions. The families of the people who died are not inconvenienced, Sarah replied. They are grieving. The communities that were destroyed are not inconvenienced. They are homeless. You cannot compensate for murder and displacement by calling them misunderstandings. The Zalathi representative was quiet for several minutes, apparently trying to find words that would somehow make the situation acceptable. Finally, he spoke in a much quieter voice than his species typically used. What do you want from us? Sarah looked across the table at the being who had been so confident in his species' right to take human worlds and displace human families. 6 months of economic collapse had taught the Zalathi what 3 centuries of cooperation had failed to demonstrate: that other species deserved respect, not just exploitation. We want you to understand that other beings have value, Sarah said, simply. We want you to recognize that having advanced technology or economic power does not give you the right to treat other species as resources to be managed. We want you to learn the difference between cooperation and domination. And if we agree to these conditions, humanity will resume cooperative activities with Zalathi space. Humanity will consider applications for membership in the Galactic Confederation from any species that demonstrates a genuine commitment to peaceful coexistence, Sarah replied. But understand that membership is not a return to the old system. There will be no senior and junior partners, no elder species guiding younger ones, no special privileges based on age or technological advancement. The Zalathi delegation spent 3 days in private consultation before returning with their decision. They would apply for associate membership in the Confederation, with the understanding that full membership would depend on their ability to demonstrate genuine change in their treatment of other species. Similar conversations were taking place throughout the former council space. The Korthax Empire, humbled by the complete defeat of their most powerful fleet, was requesting human assistance in rebuilding their economy without the military aggression that had defined their culture for centuries. The Andorian Republic was asking for guidance in transitioning from a hierarchical society to one based on equality and mutual respect. Even more significantly, dozens of younger species that had never been allowed meaningful participation in galactic government were sending representatives to Haven. For the first time in galactic history, every intelligent species would have the opportunity to participate as equals in interstellar civilization. The opening session of the Galactic Confederation was held on a day that humans had declared Equality Day, a new holiday celebrating the principle that all intelligent beings deserved respect regardless of their species, technology, or political power. Representatives from over 200 different worlds attended the ceremony. President Martinez of Earth gave the opening address, her words carried by translation systems to every delegate in their own languages. She spoke about the lessons that humanity had learned during 3 centuries of patience, and the hope that those lessons could be applied to building a better future for all species. We learned that true strength comes not from the ability to dominate others, but from the wisdom to cooperate with them as equals, Martinez said. We learned that peace cannot be maintained by forcing weaker species to accept the decisions of stronger ones. We learned that diversity of thought, culture, and perspective makes all of us stronger. The president gestured to the assembled delegates, representing the greatest gathering of species in galactic history. Today, we begin an experiment in truly cooperative government. Not rule by the strongest or the oldest or the most technologically advanced, but governance by consent of all participants. The session continued for 3 days, with delegates working to establish the basic principles and procedures that would guide the new confederation. Unlike the old council, which had been dominated by a few powerful species making decisions for everyone else, the Confederation operated on the principle that every voice deserved to be heard. On the final day of the session, a moment came that Sarah Chen would remember for the rest of her life. Councillor Vexhai, the former Speaker of the Galactic Council, requested permission to address the Assembly. The Andorian leader who had dismissed human concerns for 20 years stood before the delegates with obvious humility. I spent my career believing that experience granted wisdom, that age granted authority, and that power granted the right to make decisions for others, Vexhai said. I was wrong about all of these things. The greatest wisdom I have learned is this, that any government which must use force to maintain compliance has already failed in its primary purpose. He paused, looking directly at Sarah Chen. Ambassador Chen, I owe you and your species an apology that can never be adequate. We treated humanity as junior partners when you were actually our teachers. We mistook your patience for weakness when it was actually the greatest strength any species can possess. The former counselor's words were met with silence, not because the delegates disagreed, but because they recognized the courage it had taken to speak them. Admitting error was difficult for any individual. For a leader who had spent centuries believing in his species' natural superiority, it was a fundamental transformation of worldview. Sarah stood to respond, and for the first time in months, she smiled with genuine warmth rather than diplomatic politeness. Councillor Vexhai, the greatest strength any being can possess is the ability to recognize when they have been wrong, and choose to do better. The Confederation welcomes all species that are willing to learn and grow together. The session concluded with the signing of the Confederation Charter, a document that established the principles of mutual respect, voluntary cooperation, and equal participation that would guide galactic civilization going forward. Every species that signed committed to treating other intelligent beings as partners, rather than subjects, regardless of differences in technology, culture, or history. As the delegates prepared to return to their homeworlds, Admiral Webb approached Sarah with a final report from Earth Command. The integration process is proceeding faster than our most optimistic projections, he told her. 17 species have already implemented the social and economic reforms required for full Confederation membership. Another 34 are in the process of transitioning their governments to meet Confederation standards. Sarah nodded, looking out at the delegates boarding their ships for the journey home. What about the species that have chosen not to participate? About 40 species have elected to remain independent, Webb replied. They're maintaining peaceful relations with the Confederation, but they prefer to handle their own affairs without outside involvement. We're respecting their choice as long as they respect others' rights to make different choices. It was exactly what humanity had wanted from the beginning. The freedom to choose their own path without interference, while respecting other species' rights to do the same. The galaxy was finally large enough for everyone to be what they truly were. As Sarah watched the ships departing for hundreds of different worlds, she reflected on the path that had brought them to this moment. 3 centuries of patience had led to 6 months of conflict, which had resulted in a new structure that might last for millennia. The age of human patience was over, but it had been replaced by something better, an age of mutual respect where no species needed to be patient with oppression, because no species would be allowed to practice it. For the first time since joining galactic civilization, humans could be themselves without pretending to be less than they were. And for the first time in galactic history, every intelligent species had the same opportunity. The war was over. The real work of building a better galaxy was just beginning.
The red warning lights flashed across the research station's walls as Dr. James Walker stared at his computer screen. His eyes were fixed on the strange readings coming from the deep space scanner. After 20 years of searching the Kuiper Belt for signs of alien artifacts, he had almost given up hope. But now, something was different. "Tom, come look at this," he called to his assistant, who was half asleep in his chair. "These readings don't make sense." Tom rubbed his tired eyes and walked over. The young researcher had been working double shifts ever since the war with the stellar Dominion had reached the outer solar system. "What am I looking at, Doc?" "See this energy signature?" James pointed to a faint blue line on the graph. "It's coming from an object about 40 million kilometers from here, but it's not moving like a comet or asteroid, and the metal content is off the charts." As they watched the screen, another alarm started blaring. This one was more familiar, the warning system that detected approaching Dominion ships. The war had been going badly for Earth. The aliens had better weapons, faster ships, and shields that could stop most human attacks. They had destroyed 3 colony worlds already. "How long until they reach the station?" James asked, his voice steady despite his racing heart. Tom checked the tactical display. "The closest patrol is still 2 days out. They're busy with the battle near Pluto." James nodded and started typing commands into his console. "Get the exploration team ready. If these readings are what I think they are, we need to reach that object before the Dominion finds it." 6 hours later, their small research ship, the Galileo, was cutting through the darkness of space. The crew of 5 was quiet, each lost in their own thoughts. Besides James and Tom, there was Mike the pilot, Linda the engineer, and Pete the security officer. They had worked together for years, searching for evidence of ancient alien civilizations. Now, with humanity losing the war, their work seemed more important than ever. "Approaching the coordinates," Mike announced, switching to visual scanners. The main screen lit up, and everyone gasped. Floating in the void was a ship unlike anything they had ever seen. It was huge, at least 2 kilometers long, with a design that seemed to ignore everything humans knew about spacecraft engineering. Instead of the usual blocky shapes, it had smooth curves that flowed like water frozen in space. Its hull was covered in patterns that looked like circuit boards made of crystal. "It's beautiful," Linda whispered. "And look at the hull. There's not a scratch on it. How is that possible after floating out here for who knows how long?" James checked his instruments again. The metal composition. "It's not like anything in our database. And there's something else. The energy reading we detected. It's coming from inside the ship. Whatever this thing is, it's not completely dead." Pete gripped his rifle tighter. "Could it be a Dominion trap?" "No," James said, shaking his head. "Their technology doesn't look anything like this, and dating scans suggest this ship is at least 50,000 years old, maybe much older." They spent the next hour circling the ancient vessel, taking detailed scans. Linda found what looked like a docking port that might be compatible with their ship's airlock. The patterns on the hull seemed to shift slightly when their lights passed over them, like oil on water. "Doc," Tom called out, "you need to see this. I found something in the long-range scans." He pulled up a tactical display showing the Pluto defense line. Red dots representing Dominion ships were pushing through Earth's defenses. The battle's going badly. "If they break through, they'll detect us out here." James looked at the ancient ship through the viewport. Their research station would be one of the first things the Dominion would destroy if they reached this sector. All their work, all their discoveries, would be lost. But this ship, this could change everything. "We're going aboard," he announced. "Linda, start docking procedures. Pete, get the space suits ready. Tom, download all our scan data to a secure drive in case we need to evacuate." The docking process took longer than expected. The ancient port seemed to analyze their ship before allowing them to connect. When the airlock finally sealed with a soft hiss, the team suited up. James insisted on being the first one through. The inside of the ship was even stranger than the outside. The corridors were lit by a soft blue glow that seemed to come from the walls themselves. The air was breathable, according to their instruments, but they kept their helmets on as a precaution. Their boots made no sound on the smooth floor, adding to the eerie feeling. The energy signature is stronger this way, Linda said, checking her scanner. They followed her through curving hallways that seemed to be designed for beings about human size. The walls were covered in more of the crystalline patterns they had seen outside. After walking for about 20 minutes, they reached what appeared to be a control room. Large, curved screens lined the walls, all dark and silent. In the center was a raised platform with a pedestal. "Careful," Pete warned as James approached the pedestal. "We don't know what." Before he could finish, the patterns on the walls pulsed with light. The screens flickered to life, displaying symbols and diagrams none of them understood. A soft humming filled the air, growing louder by the second. "Everyone back to the airlock," James shouted, but before they could move, a voice spoke, not through their radios, but somehow directly in their minds. First contact protocols initiated. New biological entities detected. Beginning analysis. The humming changed pitch, and beams of light swept over them from multiple directions. James felt a slight tingling sensation through his suit. The voice spoke again. "Analysis complete. Species identification. Human. Technology level. Early spacefaring. Current status. Under attack by more advanced species, in violation of Precursor Directive 7. Tom stepped forward. You can understand us." Universal Translation Matrix active. This vessel's primary function is to protect developing civilizations from unauthorized interference, detecting major conflict in local space, beginning full system diagnostic. James could hardly believe what he was hearing. The ship wasn't just ancient. It was built specifically to help species like humanity. But before he could ask more questions, Tom's tablet started beeping urgently. "Doc, the Dominion broke through at Pluto. 3 destroyer groups are heading this way. We have less than 30 hours. The voice spoke again, this time with a hint of what almost sounded like concern. "Warning. Hostile forces approaching. Primary systems still in recovery mode. Time required for full activation, 47 hours. James looked at his team, then back at the glowing screens. They had found something incredible, perhaps humanity's best hope for survival. But with the Dominion closing in, they needed to figure out how to protect it. And fast. "Can you tell us more about your defensive capabilities?" he asked the ship. "We need to keep you hidden until you're fully active." The response came as more screens lit up, showing complex diagrams. Limited defensive systems available. Stealth protocols can be engaged, but full protection requires complete reactivation sequence. They had discovered the find of the century. Now they just had to survive long enough to use it. Time was running out. The ancient ship's AI had given them access to its basic systems, but James and his team still had to figure out how to use them. Linda spent hours studying the strange controls while Tom recorded everything they found. The patterns on the walls kept shifting, almost as if the ship was watching them. "I think I understand some of this," Linda said, her hands moving over the crystal-like surface of what seemed to be an engineering station. "The ship doesn't just have engines. It can bend space itself, but most of its systems are still waking up." Mike walked in from his exploration of the forward sections. "You won't believe what I found. There's some kind of observation deck up there. The walls become completely transparent. It's like standing in open space." "Focus, people," Pete interrupted, checking his tactical display. "We've got 26 hours before the Dominion arrives. Doc, what's our plan?" James looked up from the central pedestal where he'd been communicating with the ship's eye. "The ship says it can teach us how to use its stealth systems, but there's a problem. We need to power down our research station completely. Any energy signature could give away our position." The team fell quiet. The station contained years of their research, samples from across the solar system, and their only long-range communication equipment. Powering it down meant losing their connection to Earth's defense network. They would be completely alone out here. "Do it," Tom said firmly. "Better to lose the data than let the Dominion find the ship." James nodded and called the skeleton crew they'd left at the station. Within an hour, the station went dark. The Galileo, still docked to the ancient vessel, powered down next. Now only the ship's own systems remained active, humming softly in the background. The AI's voice echoed in their minds again, beginning emergency protocols. This vessel will now attempt to integrate with compatible organic operators. Before anyone could ask what that meant, the walls pulsed with bright light. James felt a strange tingling sensation, stronger than before. Images flashed through his mind. Star maps, weapon systems, engine schematics. The others gasped, experiencing the same thing. "What's happening?" Pete demanded, his hand instinctively reaching for his weapon. "The ship is teaching us," Linda whispered, her eyes wide. "I can feel it. I understand how the engines work now. It's incredible." Each of them received different information. Mike suddenly knew how to pilot the massive vessel. Tom understood its sensors and communication systems. Pete gained knowledge of its defensive capabilities. Linda learned about its engineering systems. And James began to grasp just how advanced the ship's creators had been. "Warning," the AI announced. "Hostile vessels have increased speed. New arrival estimate, 18 hours. They worked quickly, using their new knowledge. The ship's stealth systems were unlike anything humans had developed. Instead of just hiding from sensors, it bent light and space around itself, becoming literally invisible. But maintaining the stealth field burned through power they needed for the reactivation sequence. How did beings create technology this advanced? Tom wondered aloud as he worked with the sensor controls. "It's like they understood the basic laws of physics better than we do." "They did," James replied, sorting through the information in his head. "The precursors. That's what they called themselves. They had reached the point where technology and natural law became the same thing. This ship isn't just a machine. It's like a piece of space itself, shaped to their will." Linda called them over to her station. "Look at this. The ship's hull isn't solid metal. It's made of billions of tiny machines that can change their structure. That's why it looks perfect after all this time. It repairs itself." "Incoming transmission," Tom announced suddenly. "It's from the Pluto defense line." They gathered around as he played the message. The news was bad. Earth's forces had lost the battle badly. The Dominion wasn't just sending patrol ships anymore. They were sending a full battle group to clear out the entire sector. "How many ships?" Pete asked, his face grim. "At least 30, Tom replied, "including 2 of their dreadnoughts." The AI spoke again. "Alert. This vessel detects high levels of stress in organic operators. Implementing emergency measure 47. The blue glow in the walls turned to a soft green. Everyone felt a wave of calm wash over them. Their fear didn't disappear, but it became manageable. Their thoughts became clearer. "The ship is helping us stay focused," James realized. "It's not controlling us, just helping us handle the situation." They spent the next few hours learning everything they could. The ship's AI explained that it had been left behind by the precursors to watch over younger species. When the Dominion had attacked Earth, it should have awakened automatically, but something had damaged its sensors during its long sleep, delaying the response. "There's something else," Linda said, studying a diagnostic screen. "The ship isn't just waking up, it's evolving. The more it interacts with us, the more it adapts to work with human minds and bodies. It's like it was designed to grow with whatever species found it." 16 hours passed quickly. They took short breaks to eat and rest, but mostly they worked, preparing for what was coming. The AI taught them more with each passing hour. They learned about weapons that could disable other ships without destroying them, shields that existed in multiple dimensions, and engines that could cross the galaxy in weeks instead of years. Multiple vessels entering detection range. The AI announced. Time to contact, 43 minutes. They gathered in the control room, each at their stations. The ship had changed noticeably in the past day. The patterns on the walls moved faster now, and the whole vessel thrummed with energy. Through the observation deck, they could see the stars clearly. Soon, those same stars would be filled with Dominion ships. Full power to stealth systems, James ordered, surprised at how natural it felt to command this incredible vessel. Linda, how are the primary systems coming along? Better than expected, she replied, her hands dancing over the crystalline controls. We're at 60% power now. Weapons and shields are online, but not at full strength. The AI says we can fight if we have to, but we'd still be vulnerable. They'll find us eventually, Pete said from his security station. Stealth field or not, they'll notice their sensors being bent around us. We need a plan. James looked at the tactical display, watching the Dominion ships approach. They'd moved in perfect formation, their dark hulls bristling with weapons. Earth's finest ships had shattered against those hulls. But now humanity had something the Dominion had never seen before. Tom, he said quietly, what's the status of the ship's knowledge banks? Mostly online. We have access to about 70% of the precursor database. Why? A plan was forming in James's mind. He could feel the ship's AI considering it too, adding its vast knowledge to his human intuition. The Dominion thinks they're the most advanced species in this part of space, he said. Let's show them how wrong they are. But first, we need to survive the next few hours. The first Dominion ships were visible now, their engines burning bright against the black of space. The ancient ship hummed louder, ready for whatever came next. Its human crew, trained in hours to use technology beyond their dreams, prepared themselves. The real test was about to begin. The Dominion ships filled the observation screen, their black hulls blocking out the stars. James counted at least 40 vessels now, more than they had expected. The massive dreadnoughts led the formation, each one bigger than a small city. Their scan beams swept through space, searching. They're getting closer to our position, Tom mourned from his sensor station. The stealth field is working, but they're being very thorough. The ancient ship's AI spoke in their minds. Alert, hostile scan patterns detected. Analysis suggests 78% probability of detection within 17 minutes. Linda looked up from her engineering controls. We're at 68% power now. The reactivation is speeding up, but we still need more time. James watched the enemy ships through the transparent walls of the observation deck. He could feel the AI processing information, suggesting options. An idea formed in his mind. If they're going to find us anyway, he said, maybe we should choose when and how it happens. The ship's been teaching us for a reason. Time to use what we've learned. He shared his plan with the crew. It was risky, but everyone agreed it was better than waiting to be discovered. They moved to their stations, ready. Power readings at 70%, Linda reported. All basic systems are online. Weapons charge, Pete added. But remember, we're still not at full strength. James took a deep breath. Begin Phase 1. The ancient ship's stealth field changed. Instead of hiding them completely, it now created ghost images. Dozens of false sensor readings spreading out across space. The Dominion fleet's formation broke apart as ships moved to investigate. They're confused, Tom said, watching the enemy reactions. Their sensors are picking up strange energy signatures everywhere. They think they're surrounded. The AI's voice held a note of approval. Tactical deception protocols executing correctly. Hostile forces operating at reduced efficiency due to confusion. One of the Dominion dreadnoughts turned directly toward their position. Its massive weapons powered up, ready to fire at any threat. James waited until it was fully committed to its new course. Now, he ordered, full power to forward shields. The ancient ship dropped its stealth field. The Dominion crews must have been shocked to see a massive unknown vessel suddenly appear in their midst. The dreadnought fired immediately. its energy weapons lighting up space. But something incredible happened. As the beams struck the ancient ship shields, they didn't just stop. They changed direction, curving around the hull like water around a rock. The AI explained what was happening through their mental link. Shield technology utilizing dimensional phase variance. Hostile weapon energy redirected through subspace. The dreadnought fired again, this time with its main gun. The beam that could crack planets splashed harmlessly across their shields. In response, Pete activated one of the ancient ship's less powerful weapons. A pulse of blue light shot out, hitting the dreadnought's engines. The massive ship's power flickered and died. Direct hit, Pete reported. Their engines are offline, but the crew is unharmed, just like we planned. The rest of the Dominion fleet was reacting now. Ships moved to surround them. Weapons charge. James felt sweat on his forehead, but kept his voice calm. Linda, how's our power level? 75%, and rising faster now. Something about that energy absorption helped speed things up. The AI added new information to their tactical display. Attention. Primary memory banks now online. Beginning historical data transmission. Suddenly, their screens filled with images from the distant past. They saw the precursors, tall, peaceful beings who had seeded the galaxy with life. They watched as those same beings created ships like this one, designed to protect young civilizations until they were ready to join the galactic community. Tom, James called out, broadcast this on all frequencies. Let them see it too. The data streamed out to every ship in range. The Dominion fleet held their position, weapons still aimed at the ancient vessel. For several long minutes, nothing happened. Then a message came through. Unknown vessel, a harsh voice said, identify yourself and explain these images. James stood on the command platform. The AI helped him form his response, adding its ancient authority to his words. This ship is a precursor guardian vessel, left to protect developing civilizations. You call yourselves the Stellar Dominion. We call ourselves humans. But according to this ship's records, we're both children of the same creators. Your attacks on Earth violate the very principles of those who gave us all life. Another Dominion ship fired, perhaps not believing him. This time, the ancient ship didn't just absorb the attack. It redirected the energy, using it to power up its systems even faster. Power at 82%, Linda announced. The attacks are actually helping us. The AI spoke again, this time broadcasting to all ships in range. Warning. Continuation of hostile actions will result in activation of peacekeeping protocols. This vessel's primary function is preservation of life, not destruction. To demonstrate its point, the ship fired a series of precise shots. Each pulse of energy disabled a different Dominion vessel's weapons while leaving their life support and other systems untouched. The ships hung in space, crews unharmed but unable to fight. Look at this, Tom said suddenly. I'm picking up transmissions between their ships. They're arguing with each other. Some of them want to keep fighting, but others. The tactical display showed the Dominion fleet's formation breaking down. Some ships moved back, while others pressed forward. The ancient ship's screen showed more historical data. The precursors' hopes for cooperation between species, their plans for a peaceful galaxy. They're receiving more than just pictures, James realized. The AI is sharing the precursors' knowledge. Their whole reason for believing they're superior is falling apart. Linda called out from her station. Power level at 85%. Something big is happening with the ship's systems. The patterns on the walls began moving faster. The soft blue glow brightened to brilliant white. Through their mental link, they felt the AI reaching out, touching the minds of every being in range, human and Dominion alike. Initiating primary revelation protocol, it announced. Sharing truth of common origin. Demonstrating futility of conflict between children of the precursors. Space itself seemed to ripple around them. The ancient ship's full power was waking up, and with it, secrets that would change everything. The war's end was approaching, but not in the way anyone had expected. James watched as more Dominion ships powered down their weapons. The truth was spreading through their fleet, impossible to deny. Humanity wasn't their enemy. They were all part of something much bigger. The next few minutes would determine whether that truth would be accepted or rejected. Either way, nothing would ever be the same. Not every Dominion ship stood down. As the ancient vessel's revelations spread through space, the fleet split into two groups. More than half the ships backed away, weapons powered down. But others, led by one of the massive dreadnoughts, moved closer to attack. "Incoming transmission," Tom called out. "It's from the dreadnought." A deep voice filled the control room. "Your lies will not deceive us. The Dominion's right to rule comes from our superior power, not from fairy tales about ancient beings." James felt the ship's eye analyzing the situation. "They refuse to accept the truth," he said to his crew. "But maybe we can show them something they can't deny." The dreadnought fired its main gun again. This time, the ancient ship did something new. Instead of just absorbing or redirecting the energy, it caught the beam in what looked like a web of light. The deadly attack hung frozen in space. "Power level at 90%, Linda reported excitedly. "More systems are coming online every minute." Through their mental link, the AI showed them what was happening. The ship wasn't just defending itself. It was analyzing and learning from every attack. Each blast of energy revealed more about Dominion technology, letting the ancient systems adapt and grow stronger. "Multiple missiles incoming," Pete warned. "They're using their heaviest weapons." The missiles never reached their target. Beams of white light shot out from the ancient ship, touching each missile. Instead of exploding, the weapons simply disappeared. The AI explained that they had been shifted slightly out of phase with normal spacetime, becoming harmless. "Warning," the AI announced. "Hostile forces attempting to access emergency quantum drive systems. High probability of dangerous spacetime disruption." Tom's screens lit up with alerts. They're going to try something big. The dreadnought is powering up some kind of experimental drive system. Space twisted around the Dominion dreadnought as it activated its new weapon. The massive ship started to glow with strange energy. Even the Dominion ships that had backed away began moving further from their own flagship. "They're trying to tear a hole in space," Linda said, reading the sensor data. "If they succeed, it could destroy everything in this sector." The ancient ship responded immediately. Its hull patterns began moving so fast, they became a blur of light. The AI's voice took on a new tone, not just calm guidance, but powerful authority. Emergency protocol activated, beginning full power transition. The ship's interior changed. Walls that had seemed solid became transparent, revealing layers of technology beyond human understanding. Energy flowed through crystal-like structures in patterns that hurt their eyes to look at. James and his crew felt the AI's presence grow stronger in their minds. "You have proven yourselves worthy," it told them. "Now witness the true power of those who came before." The ship's power level jumped past 95%. New weapons emerged from its hull, not tools of destruction, but instruments of peace that the precursors had created. Light poured from the ancient vessel, surrounding the dreadnought in a sphere of pure energy. Inside that sphere, space itself came under the Guardian ship's control. The dreadnought's desperate attack fizzled out as fundamental forces were gently but firmly restored to their proper balance. The massive ship hung powerless, its crew unharmed but unable to continue their attack. "What just happened?" Pete asked, staring at his weapons display in amazement. "The ship didn't just stop their attack," Linda explained, understanding flowing through her link with the AI. "It showed them the basic laws of physics that make their weapons work. Knowledge that proves we're all bound by the same universal rules." More Dominion ships surrendered, seeing power that made their most advanced technology look primitive. But the remaining ships, about a dozen now, formed a tight attack formation. Their commanders still refused to accept the truth. "Final warning," the AI broadcast. This vessel's primary duty is to protect life, including yours, cease hostile actions, or face containment. The Dominion ships answered with every weapon they had. Energy beams, missiles, and exotic particle weapons filled space. The ancient ship's defenses handled them all differently. Some attacks were absorbed, others redirected, and some simply ceased to exist as the laws of physics were locally rewritten. Power level at 98%, Linda called out. Something's happening to the ship's structure. The vessel's hull began to change. The flowing patterns merged and shifted, forming new shapes. It was no longer just a ship. It was becoming something the precursors had designed to reshape the very fabric of space and time. Attention all crews, the AI announced to every ship in range. This vessel will now demonstrate the full scope of precursor technology. Prepare for temporary space-time discontinuity. James felt the ship's systems reach full power. Knowledge flooded his mind. The true history of the galaxy, the precursors' plans for all their created children, and the incredible responsibility they had left behind in ships like this one. They didn't just leave us these ships to stop wars, he realized. They left them to bring us together. Space rippled around them. The ancient ship created a bubble of altered reality, trapping the remaining Dominion vessels inside. Time slowed in that bubble, giving the hostile crews a chance to see and understand what was happening. The AI reached out to their minds, not to control, but to show them the truth they had been denying. The bubble was filled with images from the past, the precursors seeding worlds with life, watching civilizations grow, and creating guardians to protect their work. The Dominion crews saw their own ancestors, helped along the path to intelligence by the same beings who had guided humanity's evolution. Look at their ships, Tom said, pointing to his sensors. Their power readings are dropping. They're standing down. One by one, the last fighting ships went quiet. Not destroyed or defeated, but convinced by proof they couldn't deny. The ancient ship's bubble dissolved, leaving the crews shaken but wiser. Through it all, the Guardian ship continued to change. Its hull now rippled with patterns of pure light. New abilities were awakening. Powers that could reshape worlds, move stars, and touch the minds of entire civilizations. But the AI kept most of these powers dormant, showing wisdom in its restraint. The precursors didn't want us to rule through power, James told his crew, understanding at last. They wanted us to learn how to rule ourselves. A new message came from the Dominion fleet, not from the dreadnought this time, but from the ships that had first chosen to stand down. They wanted to talk, not about surrender or victory, but about what would come next. The war wasn't quite over, but its end was now inevitable, and it would come not through destruction, but through understanding. The ancient ship had awakened just in time to show both sides a better way forward. Peace talks began right there in deep space. The ancient ship created a neutral meeting ground, forming a sphere of breathable atmosphere between the gathered vessels. Representatives from both sides came together in this impossible space, floating among the stars. James and his crew watched as Dominion leaders faced human commanders. The war had left both sides wounded and bitter, but the Guardian ship's revelations had changed everything. Its AI maintained the peace, gently damping hostile emotions while letting reason prevail. The precursors gave us more than just life, James told the gathered leaders. They gave us this chance to become something greater than we are. Through the mental link, the AI showed everyone present a vision of the future. They saw worlds rebuilt, civilizations growing together, and technologies shared instead of hoarded. The Dominion's leaders, faced with power far beyond their own, began to understand the price of their pride. Our ancestors believed they had earned their power through strength, one of the Dominion commanders said. But we were guided, just as humanity was. We are all children playing with toys compared to what the precursors created. Linda worked at her engineering station, studying the ship's systems as they operated at full power. The technology we're seeing, it's not just advanced, it's perfect, like they found the ideal way to use the universe's own rules. The ancient ship continued to evolve even as the talks went on. Its hull now looked like flowing liquid light, and its internal spaces shifted to accommodate the needs of all species present. The AI shared more of the precursor's knowledge, but carefully, making sure both sides were ready for each revelation. They're not just giving us answers, Tom realized, watching the data flow through his screens. They're teaching us how to find answers ourselves. The peace conference moved to bigger issues. The Dominion had attacked Earth believing they were the most advanced species in the galaxy. Now they faced proof that they were part of a larger plan. Their entire reason for war had been built on false pride. "We offer peace," the Dominion's highest-ranking commander announced. "Not because we are defeated, but because we have been shown a better path." But peace brought its own challenges. Both sides had lost lives in the war. Planets had been damaged, families torn apart. The hatred and fear wouldn't disappear just because leaders signed agreements. The Guardian ship had an answer for this too. Its AI spoke to all present, sharing the precursor's wisdom about healing after conflict. "Observe," it said, and the sphere filled with new images. They saw the precursor's own history, how they had grown from primitive beings to masters of space and time. They had faced their own wars, their own struggles with pride and fear, but they had learned to move past conflict, to build something greater than victory or defeat. "They want us to learn from their mistakes," James explained to both sides. "That's why this ship didn't just destroy the Dominion fleet. It showed us a better way." The ancient vessel demonstrated more of its capabilities, not to threaten, but to inspire. It created small-scale models of advanced technologies that both sides could study together. Healing devices, clean power sources, and tools for rebuilding damaged worlds. "These gifts come with responsibility," the AI told them. "You must prove yourselves worthy of the precursor's legacy." The peace talks lasted 3 days. Leaders came and went through the sphere of space-time that the ship maintained. Agreements were made, technologies shared, and promises given. But the real change was happening in the minds of those present. Pete, who had been ready to fight to the death days ago, found himself teaching Dominion security officers about human culture. Tom shared sensor data with their technical experts, showing how humans had developed different solutions to similar problems. Linda worked with their engineers, combining human creativity with Dominion precision. The ship approved of these exchanges. "This is the path to advancement," the AI explained. "Cooperation brings greater progress than competition." Final agreements were signed on the 4th day. The Dominion would withdraw from human space, but not as defeated enemies. Both sides would work together to rebuild, with the Guardian ship overseeing their progress. Its power would ensure peace while both civilizations learned to trust each other. "There is one more thing to share," the AI announced as the leaders prepared to return to their ships. The ancient vessel's hull opened, revealing a chamber that had been hidden until now. Inside was a library of sorts. Not of books or data, but of pure knowledge encoded in crystal matrices. The precursors had left their most important messages here. "This vessel contains seeds of knowledge," the AI explained. "Not weapons or power sources, but understanding itself. You will be guided to each seed when you are ready for it." James touched one of the crystals. Images filled his mind. Solutions to problems humanity hadn't even discovered yet, but would face in the future. He saw other crystals designed for the Dominion, containing knowledge tailored to their needs and challenges. "They didn't want us to just copy their success," he said. "They wanted us to grow into it ourselves." As the leaders departed, carrying the first pieces of ancient knowledge with them, the Guardian ship began to change again. It would not remain in its current form, the AI explained. Like the civilizations it washed over, it would continue to grow and adapt. "This vessel will become a bridge between your peoples," it told James and his crew. "A place of learning, cooperation, and growth. And when you are ready, it will lead you to others who have followed the same path." Linda looked up from her engineering station one last time. "There are more ships like this one. More Guardians." "Many more," the AI confirmed. waiting for other young civilizations to find them. And when they do, you will be ready to welcome them into the community of worlds. The war that had threatened to destroy humanity had ended, but something far more important had begun. The ancient ship had not just stopped a conflict, it had started both sides on a journey that the precursors had planned millions of years ago. As the Dominion ships departed peacefully for the first time, James watched the stars through the ship's transparent walls. Somewhere out there, other Guardian vessels waited in the darkness. Other civilizations would find them, just as humanity had found this one. And one day, when all the children of the precursors had grown enough, they would discover why their ancient